All our life, in every textbook, we're taught that the first human civilization began around 8,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq and Syria, in a place they call the cradle of civilization. Simple settlements, early agriculture and ceramics, the roots of society. Rewind to the last ice age at 12,000 years ago, and humans were, at least according to mainstream anthropology, simple hunter-gatherers, living in caves, hunting woolly mammoths and other epic animals like the North American lion, and just doing the things that a nomadic tribe does. That's the narrative we've been given. But what if it's all wrong? What if there's more to the story? Hidden beneath layers of earth, ice, and forgotten time, there existed an advanced civilization that spanned the globe and is responsible for amazing stone structures that we can barely explain today. Then something catastrophic happened. A flood, an apocalypse, and it's all erased, leaving only fragments and whispers. It might sound far-fetched, but today we're digging into this idea through ancient legends, physical evidence, and stone structures existing today in defiance of our conventional understanding of history and technology. I've got a lot to cover, but the evidence is overwhelming and will soon shatter the conventional narrative of these legacy history institutions. My name is Aaron, and this is the Megalithic Mystery.
And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every animal take by two, the male and his female, of fowls also the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Genesis chapter 7.
I'm sure if you grew up going to Sunday school, these verses and the story of Noah are at least somewhat familiar to you. The world is sinning, God decides to flood the place, and tells his buddy Noah to build an ark and gather up 2 of every animal for a nice relaxing boat ride. Well, this may be the most widely known flood myth in existence. It's hardly the first, and it wasn't the last. This story shows up everywhere. The Epic of Gilgamesh is an ancient Sumerian tale carved into stone tablets thousands of years old.
Utnapishtim, their version of Noah, is warned by God of a coming flood. He builds a vessel, saves his family and animals, and survives the deluge. Sound familiar, eh? In South America, the Inca speak of Viracocha, a creator who floods the earth to punish humanity, sparing a few to rebuild. The Aztecs describe a flood that ends their 4th world, ushering in the 5th, our time. The Hopi, a Native American tribe, tell of a great water cleansing, their people surviving in boats made of reeds. In Greece, Zeus floods Earth, angered by humanity, but Prometheus instructs his son Deucalion to build an ark. The Hindu Matsya myth has Vishnu as a giant fish towing a boat through a world-ending flood, and in China, Emperor Yu masters a massive flood, shaping the world anew.
And that's just the start. Here's the full list. Over 30 different cultures all over the world, all telling the same tale. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. This is what caught Graham Hancock's attention back in the 1960s and 70s. In his book, The Fingerprints of the Gods, he argues that these legends trace back to a shared event, a real catastrophe that echoed through time. If they're all telling the same tale, there should be evidence of it, right? Well, there is. There's a lot, even though you may have never heard of it. Enter in the Younger Dryas. Let's travel back in time to 12,900 years ago at about 10,900 BC. This is at the start of the Younger Dryas period, right before meltwater pulse 1a. Now at this time, the Earth is still locked in an ice age.
Glaciers stretched across North America and Europe, some 2 miles thick, and mammoths and saber-toothed cats roamed the land. You've seen the movie. During this time on Earth, sea levels were much lower than they are today due to factors like glacial isostatic adjustment, which is where the weight of an ice cap pushes and moves the land underneath. But then, at about 10,800 BC, something devastating happens. Ice core samples from Greenland and Antarctica reveal a sharp temperature drop followed by a rapid thaw. Sea levels rose by as much as 120 meters, that's 400 feet, in a geological instant. Today, about 50% of the world's population lives within 50 miles of the coast. That kind of rise would have wiped out societies and submerged entire continents, including a place in the middle of the Atlantic called the Azore Plateau, a location many researchers believe to be the origination of the fabled lost city of Atlantis. But I'll cover that in a different video. At the exact same time, 50% of the megafauna, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths, vanished from the face of the Earth, all over the world, all at the same time. Sediment layers show massive wildfires swept across continents, burning everything in its path. Whoever lived through this, whatever they'd achieved, faced a reset, literally back to the Stone Age, and then a 5,000-year struggle to survive.
So what triggered it? Melting ice sheets like that requires an enormous amount of energy. Personally, I lean towards a comet or meteor impact on the North American ice shelf. Dr. Randall Carlson's work in the American Northwest reveals flood channels carved by water volumes that we can't comprehend today, carving solid rock so that it looks like lines of sand on a beach. I've linked his channel below.
Along the east coast of the United States, there are 200,000 elliptical craters that point to an impact, all oriented in the same direction as if something exploded overhead. But there are other theories. Robert Schoch suggests solar flares could have destabilized the climate, and some propose a sudden pole shift or volcanic eruptions. Crazier theories talk about a nuclear war between ancient societies like Atlantis and Lemuria, or even an alien invasion. Whatever it was devastating. An apocalypse that reshaped humanity.
So if this ancient civilization did exist, would there be anything left? Any remains? Well, after about 10,000 years of erosion, pretty much the only things left are made of stone. And we've got lots of that. This is what drives me. I've spent the last several years exploring the Peruvian Andes, documenting these megalithic sites that leave me speechless. These places, like Sacsayhuaman, Malcayacta, Puma Orco, and Machu Picchu, don't fit the standard timeline. And they're not alone. Take Göbekli Tepe.
Discovered by accident in 1963, located in Turkey and dated to 11,600 years ago, right at the end of the Younger Dryas, when humans were only supposed to be hunter-gatherers. This isn't some primitive camp. It's a complex of carved stone pillars, some 20 feet tall, deliberately buried for reasons we don't understand. And the complex still remains mostly unexcavated, with another site of Karan Tepe nearby. Jimmy Dorsetti from Bright Insight and my friends Mike Collins and Nikkiana Jones just visited the site recently. Take a look at their channels as they've got some incredible content. I've linked them all in the description below. One way that we're able to determine that many of these ancient sites were not built to their accredited Bronze Age builders is that their celestial alignment is slightly off. You see, the Earth does not have a perfectly circular rotation. Because the Earth is slightly pear-shaped, it has a bit of a wobble. Not to be confused with the Chandler wobble, this is called axial precession. Earth is on a 26,000-year rotational cycle of precession. So the sun will rise from a slightly different place today than it would 6,000 years ago on the same day of the year.
And we track this cycle. Where it gets really weird is that there are ancient megalithic structures all over the world that are built with celestial alignment, but they're not aligned to today. They're aligned to 10,000 years ago or even older. The Hypogeum and other temples in Malta are built with a curious celestial alignment that predates any known civilizations there.
According to Dutch researcher Lenny Riddick, the Maltese temples were built during the Mesolithic period immediately after the last ice age, when Sirius became visible in the Maltese sky around 9150 BC. Each of the temples, starting with the Hypogeum, is aligned with that star, and each successive one follows the precession. But at that time, humans were only supposed to be hunter-gatherers living in caves. So who was on the island of Malta building these complex cyclopean structures? Tiwanaku is a site in the Altiplano of Bolivia that features massive, precisely cut stones in alignment to celestial events long before the Inca. Arthur Poznański, a Polish engineer and one of my personal heroes, figured out that the whole site was built with a gate to face the rising sun of the solstice, but from 15,000 years ago. Ohio's Serpent Mound, just like Tiwanaku, is aligned to the setting sun on the solstice, but from 12,000 years ago, and there's pushback to investigate. In fact, some ancient theorists believe that this may even be a depiction of the comet that caused the Younger Dryas period.
Definitely watch Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. There's an episode featuring the site. Aside from celestial alignment, we then run into engineering and physics problems. One of my favorite places on Earth is Sacsayhuaman. Every time I go there, I'm absolutely blown away. It's an incredible polygonal wall built with massive stones that fit together lay in a three-dimensional puzzle with laser-like precision.
Some of the stones weigh over 120 tons. The engineering is so complex that we don't replicate it today. Originally attributed to the Inca, its walls are made of andesite, which is a brutally hard volcanic granite and an 8 on the Mohs scale of hardness. But at the height of the Incan Empire, when the Spanish invaded in the 1500s, the Incan only had bronze chisels. They didn't even have large trees or pack animals. How on earth were they supposed to cut these stones and then move them miles through the Andes Mountains at 11,000 feet in elevation? Something doesn't add up. Right close by to Sacsayhuaman in the city of Cusco, you find the Coricancha, a semi-restored colonial Incan temple and a museum nowadays. Inside, they have a collection of andesite and diorite stones with perfectly circular drill marks. At Ollantaytambo, there's a rock that shows clear evidence of being cut with something like a saw, water jet, or laser. Definitely not bronze chisels. You also run into similar problems all over Egypt, with numerous examples of lost high technology. But I'll put all that in a separate video. There's way too much to include here. But if you're curious right now, definitely check out UnchartedX on YouTube. I've included a link to their channel in the description. Sites like Osaka Castle in Japan, Baalbek in Lebanon, and Machu Picchu in Peru all share a pattern that defies conventional anthropology. The largest, most expertly crafted stones sit at the base, with smaller, rougher ones built on top. That's the opposite of technological progress. With almost every other example of archaeology, the further down you dig, the worse things get. Clothing, jewelry, ceramics, tools. It's how we track the progression of cultures. But at these sites, the stonework on bottom is exponentially better than the recent ones built on top. The clearest example is Machu Picchu, as we know exactly when it was abandoned during the Spanish conquest, so it still remains today as it existed during Incan times, and you can see the clear differences in the stone.
I do offer private tours to megalithic sites in Peru. Send me a DM if you're interested. Then there are the maps. The Admiral Piri Reis map from 1513 depicts Antarctica ice-free centuries before its discovery in 1820.
The Orontes Phineas map from 1525 shows similar detail, matching modern subglacial surveys. Both of these royal map makers told us that they've referenced and drew from much older ancient source maps when making theirs. But then, who was mapping Antarctica before them? Another anomaly is the Sphinx in Egypt. Dr. John Anthony West and geologists like Robert Schoch argue that the amount of water erosion on the base of the Sphinx dates it to a time when the Sahara was green, over 7,000 years ago, not the 4,500 that we're told. Dr. West even sent photos of the base to unaffiliated geologists who all verified that this showed thousands more years of erosion than was possible had it been constructed 2500 BC. Gunung Padang in Indonesia is a massive temple with materials carbon dated past 20,000 years. Stuff just keeps on getting older as excavations continue. Again, watch Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. He visited the site and it's breathtaking.
These aren't isolated oddities. They're plot points on a book that's vanished through the ages. Only fragments and myths remain. But that's what makes it fun. We can all take part in the grand uncovering of this forgotten chapter of human history. We've covered a lot today. Flood legends spanning the globe, the Younger Dryas upheaval, and ruins across the world that hint at a forgotten past. I might have gotten a detail or 2 or 10 wrong, so sorry for any mistakes. I know it's a lot to unpack, but the best part is there's so much more left to explore. Pyramids in Antarctica, submerged ruins, and even Egyptian temples in the Grand Canyon. But I'll get to all that in future videos. There is so much more to the story than we're being told, and it is a fascinating mystery. Thank you so much for joining me at the start of this grand adventure. As always, stay curious, stay engaged, always question, and know that I love you.